Good evening and welcome to this evening's school board meeting. Mr. Romano, roll call.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Present.
Mr. Rudy,
Present.
Mr. Schaff,
Present.
Mrs. Delaney,
Present.
Mr. Chumley.
Present.
5 present.
Okay. I make a recommendation to withdraw to executive session for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Rudy?
Second.
Got it. Discussion? Nope. Hearing none, roll call.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mr. Schaff,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved. We will be withdrawing into executive session and rejoining the public session at 7 p.m. Mr. Romano, will you please withdraw us from executive session?
Sure. Mrs. Brinkman,
Present?
Mr. Rudy.
Present.
Mr. Schaff,
Present.
Mrs. Delaney,
Present.
Mr. Chumley.
Present.
5 present.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Speaking at tonight's board meeting, we do have one card. Mr. Sal Facito, if you'd like to step up to the microphone, state your name, your address. He'd like to speak regarding the West Clermont High School COVID exposure procedure. Make sure that you don't reference any staff or students specifically by name in your conversation, and limit your conversation to 3 minutes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
So my name is Sal Fucito. I actually live in Fairfax. My son lives with me and is a senior at West Clermont High School. And last week we had an exposure on the football team. And I'm a paramedic for the last 20 years who has actually been quarantined under the guidelines that the state and the CDC has put out early on in this, where my whole family had to quarantine for 14 days. That was back in March, so we've come a long way since then. And I have been asking for written clarification on what is the definition of close contact of a player or student. And I received an email, I've been going back and forth, email that states that we follow, this flow chart, which I don't know if you're familiar with the flow chart, we'll get to that in a second, and Ohio High School Athletic Association, which says specifically players, coaches, officials, other individuals who had close contact within 6 feet of an infected individual for at least 15 minutes, which my son does not qualify as that, or who had direct physical contact with the person, example, who were coughed on, sneezed on by the infected person. And then it goes on to say that here at West Clermont School District, we define this as any physical contact. So I've been told that my son touched a kid who tested positive. If I touch patients constantly that have respiratory illnesses that test positive, and I do not fall under the guideline that my 17-year-old healthy student athlete falls under. The flow chart because all I've been asking for is show me in writing your procedure. Show me the proof. Your flow chart says that close contact is defined as being within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes with an individual who has tested positive for COVID-19. Doesn't say touched, doesn't say anything else, just that, your flow chart. It's funny because before the meeting, I'm sitting here and I'm hearing faculty wearing the West Clermont thing, talking about how hard this COVID thing has been for our kids, our students, the restrictions that they have to live under. All I'm asking is, if my kid does not fall within the guideline from the CDC, the state of Ohio, Clermont County, don't put his name on a list and submit it to the county that he now has to be in quarantine, which is basically isolation. You take a 17-year-old kid who's active in church, has a social life, away from his school, away from his friends, away from the activities that he has, you're going to do more harm than good. And it's ridiculous to me that in our Constitution, we have a thing called due process, that a principal can say, I say this is definition, more stricter than the state. I submitted this name to the county. This kid now is basically in confinement for 14 days.
30 seconds, please.
Say again?
30 seconds, please.
Okay, that's all I'm asking is just reevaluate this. And if you're gonna hold your student athletes to this, then every person in a school building that has touched this kid, been around this kid, they need to be held to the same standard my kid is. I want fairness, and I just want it. As a staff, if you decide that he needs to stay home from school because you offer online learning, fantastic. Don't submit his name to the county and say he now has to be quarantined and followed by the state. That's all I'm asking.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate them.
Thank you.
Mrs. Adams, I'd like to share the card with you, so maybe that you could follow up with him directly.
Oh, she's on the emails.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that you were taken care of, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Moving on to treasurer's business, Mr. Romano.
Sure, thank you. First item I have is item number 4.01 is the approval of the minutes. These were the minutes for September 14th, our last board meeting. It's recommended for approval of the minutes for September 14th as presented.
You've heard the recommendation of the treasurer. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Schaff, in a second.
Second.
Mr. Chumley, discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes,
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
yes,
5 yes.
motion
Thank you.
approved.
Item 5 is our donations, and this evening we have several donations. All of those are for the Wolves Theater Program. Received the following donations. Mr. John Welbrock donated $500. Holly Buse Bus donated $100. Dawn Walkman donated $232, and Summer Law donated $50. Resolution, it's for the request is being to accept those donations.
You've heard the recommendation of the treasurer. Do we have a motion?
so moved,
Mrs. Delaney, in a second.
Second.
Mr. Rudy, discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Delaney?
yes,
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes,
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
5 yes.
motion approved.
Thank you. Item 5.02 is a resolution of urgent necessity. Did try and provide the Board of Education some information regarding this. This is in regards to our Ohio Broadband Connectivity Grant that was received recently, end of August, beginning of September. And part of the conditions of that grant is the funds need to be spent by the end of December. And given the needs that we have with connecting the children who may not otherwise have that available to them, and the need to have the certain equipment available immediately, we're requesting that we dispense of the bidding requirements. The equipment is over $50,000. Working with the team to make sure that those bids or the quotes that we receive are competitive. So in order for us to move forward, we're placing this resolution declaring an urgent necessity, authorizing the purchase of equipment and services to fulfill the Broadband Ohio Connectivity Grant as recommended.
You've heard the recommendation of the treasurer. I'll put that on the form, in the form of a motion, and ask for a second.
Second.
Mr. Schaff, discussion?
Is Forward Edge is a company we've dealt with before. We have a relationship with them, I assume.
yes,
That is correct.
All right, so it's not like we're just not bidding for just the sake of giving this organization. It's just, it is in fact the necessity of getting this done and installed and everything done before the next 90 days, so. And where we would spend, what, the next 30 to 40 days under the bidding process there.
Correct. I think when you add to the fact that not only that but the time to install some of these materials in the schools and or get the hotspots in, we felt it necessary to expedite that.
Yep, sounds good to me.
In the meantime, our students are dependent on this access. So
Correct.
the quality of their education is dependent. So
Yeah,
time
we
is
do, we
important
have
to us.
students who don't have access to the internet, and this is a way to help mitigate that. It's not a perfect solution, but it certainly gets us going in the right direction in a bigger way than we were in the spring.
Good, okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Romano, roll call.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes,
Mr. Schaff,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney.
yes,
5 yes.
motion approved.
Thank you. Next item is item 5.03, in lieu of transportation. There are certain students that have requested in lieu of transportation payment. These students basically, there's no current bus available to or from the area to transport them to their schools. There is a means through the state that we get reimbursed that we forward those families a payment. That reimbursement is $250 per child for the 2020-21 school year. It was recommended that the district reimburse with funds from the State Department of Education for this service. So recommended.
Okay. For the recommendation of the treasurer, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Chumley, and a second.
Second.
Mrs. Delaney, discussion? Mr. Romano, roll call?
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. Item 5.04 are the financial statements and reports as listed. Those were in the agenda. Request that those reports be approved.
You've heard the recommendation of the treasurer. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Mr. Rudy. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes. Motion approved.
5 yes. Thank you. Item 5.05 are treasurer's comments. Just would like to report out that we did have a finance committee last week. Some of the items that we had looked at was looking at a fiscal calendar for the year. The other part that we looked at is trying to add some efficiencies to the way we provide the board the financial reports at each month's board meeting. One of the things that we want to try and do is be a little bit more efficient in the processing of those reports and using our system a little bit better. So within the coming month or so, I'll provide some reports to the board of the past months. I want to make sure that we are providing the information that you want, the information that you need to make decisions, information that you need to monitor our finances as we move forward. So as I send those to you, we'll first go to the finance committee, then we'll send it to the board. But I respectfully would like your feedback and input on those reports as we get those. Not saying anything is wrong with what we're currently doing, but I think in a means to make it more efficient and more of the information that you want and need to make decisions is what's really important to us. That's all that I have for this evening.
Okay.
Any
Well, I
questions?
think, along the lines of the reports, in the past, we've received very detailed, like a summary of each page of the financial reports. And it's very helpful for us, even though we're reading it, there are guests out in the community and then those that are watching online that may not have access to that.
Okay.
That they like to see specifically that we're getting our tax money in, or we're low on funds because of X, Y, Z. So, we've talked about it in the past, maybe go back to a couple, cycles before you joined us, and maybe watch how Kelly had presented. Maybe go back where, Alana Cropper presented.
Okay.
And maybe do a combination, just giving us a little bit more for our communities.
Sure, I think we can do that both at the board meetings and actually on the website, put some of those monthly financials on there too with explanations.
Perfect, thank you.
So, thank you.
Anything else? Moving on to superintendent's business, Mrs. Adams.
Dr. Fultz is going to present the personnel.
Okay,
Good evening, members of the board, Mrs. Adams, Mr. Romano. In front of you is the personnel agenda for September 28th, 2020. On the agenda today, we have the resignation of one of our computer technicians. We also have the proposed transfer of Tina Lupariello. She was the Holly Hill Administrative Assistant to the principal. She will now become Mrs. Adams' Administrative Assistant. Along with that is the proposed hiring of the new Principal's Administrative Assistant at Holly Hill. Her name is Catherine Root. She is currently the Assistant Elementary Secretary, so she'll be moving to a full-time position there. We also have the proposed hiring of 3 full-time paraprofessional aides and 1 part-time paraprofessional aide to help out with our most needy students. The agenda also includes 6 student workers for the theater on an as-needed basis, so we're hoping to get that back up and running. Also, the agenda includes a couple pages of supplemental contracts. This would be for home tutors, instructional leaders, club leaders, some middle school winter coaches, Saturday school workers, assistant custodians, and if you go back to the page 4, it is under school volunteers. This list is people we are wanted to approve to volunteer in our library. So in order to be able to get books in the hands of our students and they come back in, before it was just to reshelf them, now we have to go through a sanitation process. So these volunteers will help us sanitize the books and get them back out in students' hands as quickly as possible. I respectfully request that you approve the personnel agenda as submitted.
You've heard the recommendation of Dr. Fultz. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Rudy, and a second?
Second.
Mr. Chumley. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes,
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
5 yes.
motion approved.
Thank you. I'm also going to discuss the non-certified exempt salary schedule. So before you is a resolution to approve a revised non-certified exempt salary schedule. We typically try to bring these salary schedules up for renewal in early June or early summer, and put them in place for the following year. The current one that we have in place now was board approved on January 29, 2020. We are proposing a renewal of a revision of the non-certified salary exempt schedule and adding 2 positions to the list. The first position is Assistant EMIS Administrator. Education Management Information System, or commonly referred to as EMIS, plays a significant role in allocations of funds for our district. This position will allow us to build capacity and support in this role by helping our EMIS administrator, who is Lou Stahl, manage the EMIS infrastructure. This also gives us the opportunity to allow Lou to take on other much-needed data infrastructure projects. So further, this position will help increase capacity and support for student enrollment, which also feeds our overall funding structure as well. The second new position that was added on there is a Human Resources Office Assistant. So in order to keep up with the demands of human resources and to be able to effectively support other departments and our students and staff, this position would help build capacity in our ability to help support our other departments in a more modern format and still giving us enough time and people power to work through things like FMLA, COVID, hiring, onboarding, placement, contracts, and all that fun stuff that we do in HR. So I respectfully request that you approve the revised non-certified salary exempt schedule as submitted.
You've heard the recommendation of Dr. Fultz, and I'll put that on the floor in the form of a motion and ask for a second.
Second.
Mrs. Delaney. Discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes,
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
5 yes.
motion approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fultz.
Thank you.
Item 6.03 is policy 8450.01, protective facial coverings during pandemic and epidemic events. You've seen this a couple times. In fact, this is the 4th time. And it's because we found an error, and there was one sentence, students in an inclusive term for any child. It read last time K-12, and it needed to read PK-12. It was a mistake that we found after you guys voted. So this should be the last time that we talk about this policy. I apologize for that, that mistake. And so I'm asking that you approve the mask policy on the 4th reading as presented.
You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Delaney, and a second?
Second.
Mr. Chum. Discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
I think it was Mr. Chumley.
Mr. Chumley.
Mr. Chumley, I'm
Yep.
sorry. Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes,
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
5 yes.
motion approved.
Item 6.04 is our Centers of Excellence update. I did an overview of that at our last meeting, and now each of the team members will be coming just to shed a little more light on our goals, our challenges, and our plans for the future. So today, Mr. Jeffrey Ryle, the Coordinator of Strategic Initiatives and Communication, will join us.
I was wondering why Mr. Ryle was in a suit today.
I woke up like this.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be with you here this evening. As Superintendent Adams said, I'm here to talk about the Experience Centers of Excellence. And if you remember, our Centers of Excellence are our framework that we use to ensure that our mission and our vision, our vision, and our values are implemented, and how we do the work of those things. Which one am I? This one. So, as you know, West Clermont, our mission is to commit to excellence with every learner, every day, in every way. Our vision is that together as one community, we learn, lead, succeed. And our values, we believe that we are on the rise with relationships, innovation, student-centeredness, and empowerment. So those things are what guide our work, and the framework, the Centers of Excellence, is the way that we live that out. So next, what I'd like to do is switch to the next slide. And this is just a summary of the Centers of Excellence. As you know, you as the Board of Education provide the stability, the governance aspect of our work. We have the educational, performance, cultural, financial, and today I'm talking about experience. So what is the Experience Center of Excellence? Well, in the communication department, in the area of experience, we lead the ongoing development of the public perception of the district. We champion the West Clermont story. We drive the district brand, and we strive to move people beyond just consuming information to engagement and involvement. And one way to capture that is that we believe that an excellent West Clermont experience begins and ends with trust, which is brought about by effective communication and quality engagement. Our areas of impact in the experience realm include electronic newsletters, print material, social media, and many other formats such as audio and video. So what are our goals for the first semester? First, our first goal in experience is to expand our connection. We want to establish connection with key communicators, and our ultimate goal is to elevate parent voice. We want to continue to expand our reach beyond just our parents. As we know, that the majority of our community here in West Clermont actually do not have students in the district, and so we want to expand our reach beyond just those families that have students in the district. We want to improve our engagement. So we want to grow our level of engagement on social media and our district newsletter open rates. And we want to continue to develop engaging content for the Wolfpack Hub as a resource for parents. Third, we want to increase innovation. So we want to expand the use of podcasts, other audio and video to engage in newer ways with families and community. We want to develop some promotional materials such as the quality profile, our roadmap for success literature, and various mailers. And we want to expand the implementation of final forms and remind tools that we'll use to gather data and to communicate effectively. And last, we want to deepen trust. We want to continue the feedback loops that we've established, such as our thought exchange process. We're going to be doing a thought exchange survey here very soon. I want to talk about, to get feedback from parents about our return to school implementation plan and how they feel that it is going. So during COVID-19, as you know, the experience aspect of our district shifted. And so there were some lessons that we learned throughout COVID-19. The biggest lesson that we learned is that the schools, the district, is the hub of our community. Families rely on us for more than just providing their child with an education. So many families rely on us for material needs, such as food and clothing, technology needs, social and emotional needs of students, and interestingly, we learned that they also rely on us for the social emotional needs of adults as well. We learned that user experience is king when it comes to communicating with our families, especially in a crisis. So we learned that we needed clear, simple communication, that less is more, that we needed a predictable rhythm, and we wanted to be transparent. We wanted to give up-to-the-date information to parents, and we admitted when we didn't know something. And we chose vulnerability over a polished product. Our challenges during COVID-19 are that the schools are the hub of the community. So it would appear insensitive if all we did was communicate information and we didn't back it up with action. Our community needed us in many different ways. Another challenge was the sheer volume of information over a long period of time. We had to kind of get information out without leading to fatigue, sort through the noise, and give a balance for parents. We had limited resources, time and staffing. It was a constantly moving target, as you know, which can lead to confusion, especially if parents and staff aren't keeping up with the message. In the confusion, we discovered based on multiple platforms and sources. So where do I go to find the right information? What needs do I have that we need to keep working on, and what things need to go away, and what things do we need to add? Our current projects and challenges, we have many things going on right now. I'm pleased to give you a copy of the hot off the press quality profile that is going to print. And this document, if you remember, we give out, we create every year to continue telling the West Clermont story, and I'll look back on the previous school year. So this year it is guided based upon our strategic themes and core values as we work through the quality profile. Each section highlights something from the previous school year. We'll be doing, as I mentioned before, a thought exchange survey at the end of the quarter to get parent perception on how things were for returning to school. We're starting a series on the People First podcast called Unmasked, which will, each episode will highlight a different person that is part of the Centers of Excellence, and we're looking forward to that. We have a social media campaign that we're continuing to ramp up, trying to connect parents in many different ways, including something new called the WC Connection, where we feature a staff member and allow people to get to know them outside of just their job. And our current challenges continue to be limited resources. We need better data to know when and where we're being successful so that we can be efficient. And there's still confusion due to multiple platforms and sources. So parents still are trying to figure out, where do I go for what information? And so that's one of the challenges we want to work on. So where do we want to be by the end of the year? Well, first and foremost, we want to have developed a deepened trust with both families and the community. That is our top goal in the experience in the communications department. We want to increase the level of engagement. We want to have completed our communication survey and our audit to identify areas for improvement and focus. We want to have a successful state of the schools in the early spring. We want to elevate the West Clermont brand across the entire organization. And we want to maximize creative partnerships to support our communication efforts. And again, in our Centers of Excellence, from the educational excellence, performance, cultural, financial, experience, all supported by the governance of the Board of Education, all working in concert together, we know that together as one community, we will learn, lead, and succeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys have any questions or any comments about anything?
The only comment I can make is I believe that you and your staff of one did a fantastic job throughout the summer and into the beginning of the school year, getting us launched with thorough and complete communication for our families, which was paramount for them to be comfortable and confident in what we were doing and how we were doing it. And I think that paved the way for our success in the fall. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Much
Yeah,
appreciated.
I agree. I think our communication in at least the last 18 months, if not more, have been exemplary. I think that was one of the keys to the success of the levy. That's one of the keys to the successful start of the school year. is just the communication. We can never communicate too much, but actually we can, and I think you've really struck that balance, and the profile and all, kudos.
Thank you. Our department would not be successful if we didn't have the backup of everyone else, because we rely on everyone else to feed us information so that we can communicate. So anything that we've done directly reflects what all of the other centers of excellence are doing as well. Thank you.
Job nicely done.
And I definitely look forward to more People First podcasts, because I've
Oh,
listened to a couple
it's gonna
of
be
those,
good.
and, yeah.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Item 6.05 are superintendent committees. I know Mr. Romano had mentioned the finance committee, so I don't know if Mr. Schaff would like to speak about that. And then we had a personnel team meeting, Mrs. Brinkman. So do either of you want to speak to our meetings this week?
Yeah, because I was gonna chime in, instead of chiming in during the financial thing, but yeah, it was, during the finance committee that we had earlier, or last week, was talking about the financial reports. And they're the same reports that have been coming before I was on the board. And I think the comment I made was that when I was new on the board, I didn't feel comfortable with telling the treasurer who's been around for 15 years, can we make any changes? And then I didn't feel comfortable when we had a new treasurer who was new to school, being a school treasurer. Hey, can we change the reports that you're just learning and all that? But I feel comfortable with Dan, his experience and all that to make the reports that he gives us easier on them, because how he and Tony who sat in explained is that some of the reports that they give us are piecemealed together for us. And I'm like, I don't know of anyone on the board who wants you to take additional time to give us reports, that you could give us that are generated out of whatever system we use and all that. And, and I said, in my opinion, that, whatever he feels report-wise can convey the information. And, whether you like it has drilled down as it is, or if we want it more, 30,000 feet, not necessarily by fund or whatever. But I said, one of the things that I like is, where are we? What did we do this month? How does it affect us for the year, and where we end up? And, that's really the information that I'm looking for. And then, like with the 5-year forecast page with the general fund one, is I kind of like to see how it actually affects the actual 5-year forecast, and as opposed to just giving us a snapshot of this month, and not really seeing how that affects the forecast. So that was kind of my input. And then, as far as, a lot of the lists of checks and things, I mean, that's good to be able to, keep that control aspect, but, having a summary of certain things, some of our treasury items, we don't necessarily need the actual statements every month. If we can get a summary, and if we want to see the statements, we can. But I mean, I just felt that to make it easier on our treasurer's department, that, how to maybe not mess with the reports, but, update the reports and give us some better information, not necessarily better, but present it in a better way. And that my suggestion was, if, how they come up with it, give us both, and then we can compare how it was, how we want it to go forward, and give Mr. Romano suggestions on how we want things going forward. But I agree, having a little bit of discussion about what's included in those reports, I think helps us and helps the community as we're broadcasting, so. But other than that, the finance, yeah, that was pretty much the discussion in the finance committee.
And on the HR or Personnel Committee, remind everyone that this is a committee of listening of the plans of our staff and what they anticipate needing and how we're doing. And it was a very enlightening conversation where we think we're very strong in some areas. They were very easily representing where we have some deficiencies and where we're overworking some individuals and departments in buildings. Because of the COVID needs and other changes, where their focus may be redirected to maybe gain additional resources in some areas. So it was really nice hearing that they're not only looking at the health of the district, but they're also looking at the health of the employees, so that we are not running a really strong department off because they're consistently working 60 hours per week, week after week, month after month, and let's hope not year after year. You can only do that for so long. So I appreciate knowing the deficiencies or the weaknesses we have, and it's not in staff and performance, it's in bodies, and where we may have to add some additional resources. And I'm certain that that will be forthcoming in the next month or two, as we will see them filling some of these gaps and making sure that we're well covered and staying within our budget and all of that good stuff. So it was a good meeting. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Right, item 6.06, Superintendent Comments. I just have a few things I wanted to share. First, I'll start with this email. It came today, it's a little excerpt from an email that happens to be from a parent who has a brand new child to West Clermont, who happens to also be in the WCOA, our online academy, who also is accessing our gifted services. I'm not sure what wizardry you all are using, but I've never had my child come home from a day at school excited to go back. I was nervous that he'd be a bit shy and withdrawn today, being completely new to the district, but it sounds like he jumped right in, having a great time. Thank you so much for everything. So although we certainly have had our pile of challenges, and not everybody has had the perfect experience coming back to school, we have a lot of success stories like that. And if you can have a success story out of a brand new kiddo who's also accessing our online academy, I think it's something to celebrate. So I wanted to share that one with you guys today, because I'm very proud of the staff. The creativity, the stick-to-itiveness has just been impressive. And here we've been in school now since August. We've almost been in since August 31st to September 28th. I think a lot of people didn't count on us to make it this long. And so I'm just very proud of them using the Stop the Spread protocols and doing all that we're asking them to do. Students have been great, staff have been great, and parents have been great. So some challenges that we continue to have that I want to make sure that I bring out to you. First, I think I had mentioned to you guys, I talked to Dr. Richard. He's the Assistant Deputy Superintendent of the state of Ohio. I've been having a few conversations with him regarding our technology and our ability to test. The way things are looking right now, the federal government is still requiring the testing that has always been in place. And there haven't really been changes in that, either at the federal level or the state level. And what I wanted to just make sure that they were, I'm sorry about my mask. The more I talk, the more it falls. I think I'll just go down. Maybe that'll be easier. Sorry, I apologize. The challenges that we have having all the equipment that we need, because we've gone from being one-to-one in 6th grade through 10th grade to being one-to-one K-12. I've already mentioned to you guys, and Larry had mentioned to you, just the challenges with our shipment in China that's still kind of sitting on a barge and not with us. And so we've done all these extra hoop jumps to actually get devices in students' hands, but maybe the quality and the sustainability of these devices are not what we would pick if we had a choice. And so that compromises our ability to do testing, and we're up on kind of benchmark testing that we do internally, and we have some state testing that's coming up with our 3rd grade. And so we're working very hard to achieve that, and I just wanted to spend time. Dr. Richard has been wonderful in being a listener and understanding the scope of our challenge and really appreciating all the heroic efforts that our technology team has gone through. But there aren't any relief at this point, and it would take change in legislation. So we're going to continue to work with the state as they call, and I share our story and what we're facing, because I know we're not alone. I just think it's important that the state officials really hear the realities of what school districts are facing. So that's one thing. The second thing, and it relates a little bit to what Mr. Facito had to speak about tonight. We are feeling this across Cincinnati, and I've even been on some calls with superintendents across the state, where the COVID spread has not really been significant. Like, there have been cases, we've had adults as well as children with the case, but each case has not, thankfully, has not spread and become a huge outbreak inside of the school system. What has been a challenge is the quarantines. And I'm hearing that from superintendents across the state. So one of the things I've done is speak with our health commissioner about it. Right now, we're just absolutely following the guidelines, and it's about that being within 6 feet for 15 minutes. And on the athletic teams, it's even more risky because of all the physical touch that happens on a sports team. And with any one case, you can end up quarantining 35, 40 people, depending on the involvement of that child in the school system. And so having that happen to your child, that's 14 days when your student is at home. And of course, that's some weekend days in the week, but it's a huge challenge across the state. And as superintendents, we don't claim to be medical experts. We don't claim to want to tell the medical field like how to do their job, or that we know better. We just wanted to make very clear that we need help across the state looking at the data and how it's impacting schools, and to not lose sight of this, because here we are, we're back in action, and yet we have some students who are now on their second wave of quarantine. So from August 31st to September 28th, 2 bouts of 14 days. And so here, the standards are higher this fall than they were in the spring. The expectations are more. The initial need just to get back to it is huge. The stakes are higher. And this certainly is a challenge. And I know, I'm living it in my own house right now. It's a challenge to keep, teenagers out of school for 14 days, and no matter what the age is of students. And so I certainly appreciate what Mr. Facito had to say tonight, and we've had other parents just frustrated with the quarantine, but we're not different here in West Clermont. This is kind of a feeling that's happening across the state based on us following the guidelines. So we'll continue working with the health commissioner, because we think using the data will help us get to better resolutions. And we do know, we're going into October, we're getting more into where sickness seems to elevate, and so we're just going to stay working tightly with our partnerships, our superintendent and like FASA and different organizations across the state, the health department and the medical field, and then our school system. Every week I'm committed to connecting in those in ways so that we can have the latest information and make the best decisions for our kiddos. And finally, I'll just say, because we are moving into typically students are less healthy during October, November, December. We're just asking to remind everybody to do the West Clermont protocols and also to be ready to pivot. We came close here recently with a middle school, like not quite having enough staff to operate. And so, and it's because of quarantine and it's because of other illness. And so we were able to flood some resources into them. But if we would get to a place where we don't have those extra subs, we would maybe have to go to remote for a day or two. And so I just want everyone to be prepared, not only for a long-term remote switch, but a short time for operational needs. So, of course, knock on wood, we don't want to have to do any of that, but I want to just not let anybody off guard of what may have to happen in our school system. So, do you guys have questions for me?
So you had mentioned the following the self-assessments and all that, and I think it's important to distinguish that these are symptoms, whether they're symptoms of COVID or flu or cold, that if a child has a fever of 100.4, whether it's COVID related or not, they need to stay home. Mm-hmm. If a child has diarrhea, or if they have some of those other symptoms, not necessarily cough, that's the allergic, but a cough that's not normal, I mean, even if it's not COVID related, they need to stay home. And I don't know if you can confirm that or just, or.
Well, we certainly,
affirm.
that is kind of step one. And when we talk about the partnership between school and home and our staff, it is huge. Like, that's the first level of mitigation. The next level is the washing of the hands and the masks and the social distancing. All those things add up to, I think that's why we've been able to be in school this long. I really think we've been successful because we've kept children away who are ill or staff that are away that are ill. But we'll need to continue to be vigilant. And I think that's the challenge. It's like everyone was really motivated to get those kids back to school. We need to keep up that same level of intensity as the year goes on with the cleaning protocols and everything. it'll be hard for staff and students because you just want to like relax and just kind of be. But we need to stay on top of it as we have done. And again, I'm very proud of the staff. I think it's gone very well. We just can't let our guard down.
Are things better in Ohio? I got that from the governor's speech the other day,
Okay.
on Thursday.
Well, you know what? Usually every Thursday we get an update on the color coding system. We were very busy here on Thursday, so I didn't even pause to listen to it that day. So I haven't heard of anything significant in Ohio, anything special about Ohio. But it just means I'm out of the loop. It doesn't mean it's not true, so. We usually have somebody watching every day, watching the updates. But it's just been busy around here.
Anything else?
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, moving on to board comments. Mr. Chumley, you want to start?
Sure. I really appreciate the uniqueness of our team, how well they work together. And when there's trials, that really shows, like now, it shows how strong of a foundation that we have. So much so that it comes across as wizardry, apparently.
Right.
So, yeah, just week after week, I'd like to continue to show my appreciation. Thanks for that.
Mrs. Delaney?
Thank you to everybody, from the top all the way down to the little preschoolers. Everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, and it really shows. And the kids love just being, they just want to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. And it really shows with our older kids who tend to be not rule followers all the time because they're expressing their individuality and learning how to settle into society. And but our middle schoolers and high schoolers, they're doing what they have to do because they just want to be normal. We all want to be normal. You know, as a medical professional, I get everybody's frustration because things are varied. You know, everybody's got a platform on it, and we are doing what we have to do to be operational, to be here so our kids can be normal. You know, hoping we're gonna get some more guidance so that we can make better decisions, so that we can alleviate the quarantine challenges. It's not ideal, but it's what we have to do right now. So, you know, we're learning, and every day's a new learning experience. And as Mr. Chumley said, we could not have done this without the unique flexibility of our team. So thank you, everyone.
Mr. Schaff?
I'll thank Mr. Frosito. He didn't stick around, but I'll thank him. I always appreciate when the community comes out, and appreciate more when they step up to the mic, because not everybody can do that. A lot of keyboard warriors, but not a lot of people who want to come and put themselves on camera. So I appreciate that. And, thank you to Mrs. Adams, Mr. Romano, and your team, as always. And other than that, that's all I got tonight.
Mr. Rudy?
I'll just say it's a privilege to be a part of this school district. I've always felt that way since August 15th, 1983.
I was in third grade, Jim.
Thank you. I should have known that was coming.
I had to say it.
I wasn't here.
Wow.
I will not feel old.
You look great.
And on that happy note, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this evening at tonight's board meeting. Our next board meeting is on Monday, October 12th, correct?
I feel that sounds right.
Yes.
Got it.
Sorry, you were faster. Yeah, October
All
12th.
right.
It is Columbus Day.
Columbus.
Well, yeah, it's some federal holiday,
Yeah.
whether it's Columbus Day or some other name used now.
So we'll see the board back on October 12th.
October 12th.
Got me all flustered there. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Schaff,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved. Thank you for joining us this evening.